Friends, today we are going to talk about the new artifact items in New World. These are a brand new sort of tier of item that were added to the game with the rise of the Angry Earth expansion, and they're pretty special. Right now there's only 27 of them in the game. There's one of sort of each type, so one spear, one blunderbuss, one Greataxe, one heavy helmet, one light helmet, one medium helmet. You guys get the idea. And they all have this sort of special thing where they have a unique perk, and sometimes even have two unique perks that you can't find on anything else in the game. So Scorpion Sting, for example, has the Sting perk, where it makes the javelin pull people towards them. And then we have the Greataxe. This has two different perks. So it has Abyss and Darkened Blade. These are both unique to the Abyss Greataxe, and you can't find them anywhere else. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through all of the artifacts, where you can find them, and we're just going to talk briefly about whether they're even worth farming for or not. So we'll start off with the left-hand side slot. I guess we'll just go top to bottom, and then right to left, or left to right, whatever. We will start off with the Grey Wizard's Hat, which is a light helmet. Now, obviously, for the style points, looking like Gandalf, this is a good item to pick up. If we talk about what's actually unique about the item, it is Brilliance and Intelligence. It also has 45 Intelligence, so this is kind of unusual because pretty much every other artifact gives you this Magnify stat, where it whatever your highest stat is, that's what it becomes. But this is always an Intelligence helmet, so obviously designed for sort of mages. And like I say, it gives 45 Intelligence when you compare it to like other helmets. The most you can get is usually 32 at 700 gear score, so it's giving us 13 extra points. And it also doubles your mana pool as well. So this is kind of fun. I don't think it's one of the best artifacts out there, and compared to all the other pieces of artifact armor you can run, probably not one you're going to go for. But if you do want to pick it up, you can get it from the major breach caches level 65. So I was doing some major breaches up in Murkgard. I think the ones that are sort of in the Upper Harrow area in particular, so the Corrupted Monolith here and the Corrupted Portal, these have maybe an increased chance to give it. It's not entirely sure, but if we pop one open, maybe we get lucky. We didn't that time. Try one more time here. No, we didn't. But in theory, this is where you're supposed to be able to get the this particular hat from. So if you're after the sort of Gandalf aesthetic, go for the Corrupted Portals level 65 plus, or Corrupted Breaches in general. Next up, we have the medium hat. It's the Djinn head wrap. I don't really rate this highly at all. I think compared to most of the other artifacts, this is kind of a bit stinky. The unique perk on it is Shrug Off. One thing we should also say about the artifacts is these other perks down here. So other than the bottom perk, everything is locked in. So with the Gandalf hat, for example, critical retribution can be changed to any other perk you want it to be, as long as it's relevant for armor, so you can't put sacred on it, or you can't put some sort of weapon, you can't put vicious, but yeah, any perk that would go on armor you could put down here, and the same with this one, so we could change health out to something else. Turns out health's a pretty good perk though. Anyway, the unique perk on this one is non-crowd controlling debuffs expire 20% faster on you. It's just not very exciting, it's going to be said. I don't think we can say anything more than that. It's just not a very exciting perk, but it's a relatively easy item to farm. All you have to do is kill some of the roaming bosses that you can find in the Elysian Wild Zone. So right now we have one down here, Zerash, but you're going to see a bunch of these sort of skulls with crowns pop up all around the Elysian Wilds. If you can kill those, you have a chance to get it to drop. You can also open the Elite Beast chests as well. There's lots of those in the Isle of Zervan. You can find quite a few of them in the Tribal Highmount, or Tribunal Highmount. Those are the chests that you can only open once a day. You need the special signs to unlock them. They have a chance of giving you the Djinn head wrap. Next up, we have a heavy helmet here. It's called Unyielding. Again, the bottom perk can be changed here, but it has Hard Head, PvP only, 20% less damage from critical hits. This is really, really good for, I mean, other than that, I mean, my goodness, look at that. Look at that frickin' chonka. Other than its visual look, this item is pretty impressive. Well, that is impressive in its own right, but PvP only, you take 20% less damage from critical hits. This is basically equivalent to wearing 4 pieces of resilience. So if you're in a heavy or a medium equip load, this is a very, very serious contender, and probably an item that we're going to see people running a lot in PvP. 20% less damage from critical hits is no joke. And obviously, Shirking Fortification, Refreshing's okay. Arcane Harnessing, probably just want to change this to Health, or Elemental Aversion, or something like that, something better down here. But yeah, pretty interesting helmet, very interesting visual, and you can get this one from the PvP rewards track. However, you do have to put in quite a bit of work for this. So if you hit K and then you go to the PvP rewards track, you need to be at least level 100, so you have to be what is that, diamond or something like that, platinum. Yeah, you need to be in the platinum sort of area, and then you have a chance to see it on checkpoint 3. So this final checkpoint over here, any track that's 100 or above, you can see it in checkpoint 3, and it's going to set you back 50,000 Azoth salt. So quite a lot of PvPing to be done to unlock that one. Next up, we have the Featherweight Jacket. Moving on to the sort of chest slot here. The Featherweight Jacket has a pretty interesting aspect to it, and that is weightless is its unique perk. So I'll take my camera off the way here. It says this armor is weightless, funny enough. And you can see here, it's not actually contributing to our character's equip load at all. So when we put it on, it doesn't actually weigh anything is what it's saying. So I initially thought when I saw this item that it was going to be, you know, this weight down here. Well, actually it doesn't weigh anything as well, but I thought it was going to just be like, oh, you know, counting to your character's sort of bag encumbrance, and I was like, wow, that's really useless. But no, it turns out it's actually doesn't impact your character's weight at all, which means you can sort of blend this into a build and get away with like heavy boots and a heavy helmet and still be considered in a light equip load. You can even use like a Kite Shield and then have everything else light and have this light and still be in a light equip load. So it lets you get away with a few sort of interesting combinations with armor pieces. Outside of that, not terribly exciting. Refreshing physical aversion's okay. Freedom, again, you can change that perk to be something that you want. But if you do want to pick this item up, it comes from Nermur is how they're called, who's in the Elysian Wilds, and they're located at Fungal Ridge. So Fungal Ridge is over here, and Nermur, you have to go right up to the top of this sort of swirly bit, and then you get to fight the bird. This is one that you can definitely do very solo, quite easy to pick up. You just gotta kill like a low HP enemy a few times. Next up in the chest category is the medium chest, and it's the Nimble Leather Coat. Now this one's pretty awesome for healers and anybody who wants to get more cooldown reduction. It has the highly refreshing unique perk, which reduces max cooldowns by 10%. Now this does stack on top of refreshing, so refreshing caps out at 20% in total, but you can get another 10% cooldown reduction from this, which is going to be pretty nice. So I expect I'm going to be using this in a lot of healer builds and any other build that cares about cooldown reduction. Sadly, for PvE fanatics, people who are, you know, dedicated to PvE, this is a PvP only item, or rather the way that you obtain it. Once again, you have to be level 100 on the PvP rewards track, so level 100 or above, which means you have to be platinum or above, and it can only appear in checkpoint 3, so it could be one of these 3 rewards, and it will set you back another 50,000 Azoth salt for this one. But a very good item, so probably worth putting in the grind if you can, you know, if you enjoy doing the PvP or can sort of sit through that much PvP. Finally, in the heavy chest category, we have the Void Dark Plate. Now, this item is actually bugged on the test server. It doesn't seem to actually provide its bonus that it says it does, but Dark Reinforced, your armor is increased by 20%. So this is basically, you always have a 20% fortify on top of you, which is pretty cool. This is going to be interesting for quite a few tank plays. You know, if you're going to get rended, then the rend's going to have even more value, but I do think for tanks, this is very, you know, it's worth considering. Obviously, Enchanted Ward, Physical Aversion, some other good perks, and the Nature Harnessing, you could change this over to Health or Elemental Aversion again. This particular chest piece drops from the final boss of Barnacles and Black Powder. She's called Nereid. I don't believe you have to be doing the mutated version, but maybe doing a mutated Barnacles and Black Powder increases the drop rate. I'll have to double check and let you guys know in the comments down below once we have the answer to that. But final boss of Barnacles to get this heavy chest here. Moving over to the gloves, we actually don't have any light gloves, so we're gonna have to go straight to medium. Now, I assume there probably will be light gloves. This is on the test server, by the way. We haven't pointed this out yet, but we are on the PTR right now, so some things might change with some of these perks and the way everything happens. Then we might have a few changes. If there's any major changes, again, I'll let you guys know in the comments down below. But right now, no light gloves on the test server. We only have the medium gloves, and the medium gloves are called Ghoul gloves, and they have a unique perk that's called Ghoul's Touch, and it says when you hit a foe below half health, transfer 1 debuff. So if you hit an enemy and that enemy is below half health, you can take 1 debuff from yourself to them. This is very niche, very specific, so I can't see this being used a whole lot. It's a cool concept, but I don't think it's an item that you need to go out and farm for very soon. The other perks on it are pretty good though. Refreshing, Elemental Aversion, Freedom, got some good stuff here. These gloves you can get from the Overgrown Guardian, And then there's also another mob as well, but I think the Overgrown Guardian is going to be the easiest one to farm, and that's located in the Dayspring tree. You'll see some footage here, but he's roughly around this area, if I remember rightly. He's sort of like a big tree brute thing. The other artifact gloves currently available to us are the Magnetic Gauntlets. These have the perk Magnetic. Crit chance increased by 50%, but crit damage reduced by up to 50%. These are very niche, very specific. I could see these working in like a Void Gauntlet build maybe that cares about critting more often. There are some sort of items in the game, like I say with the Void Gauntlet, where they care about crits, cooldown reduction on all abilities on critical hit. On critical hit, heal for 15% of damage done. So that's the only sort of application I can think of these right now. So they are pretty niche. Also, this bottom perk is pretty bad. Definitely want to replace that with something else. But you can get these from the final boss of Tempest Heart, which is good old Isabella. So Tempest Heart right up at the top, which we don't have discovered. Again, I think you can get it in normal and the mutated version from Isabella at the end of Tempest Heart. Moving over to the leg slot, we don't have any light legs again on the test server. If there is some light legs on live, we'll review those at a later date. But the medium legs are called the Attuned Leather Pants, and these are pretty nuts. We have plus 50 magnifies, so 50 to the highest stat that you've currently got points into. Pretty good. And then we have Well-Rounded as another unique perk on this, plus 10 to all other attributes. So you get 50 to whatever your highest points. So yeah, it's telling me it's strength right now, and it definitely is. And then plus 10 to everything else. Quite a lot of stats that you get from this item. If I'm not mistaken, let's do the maths. 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. 90 stats from one item. Absolutely bonkers. And then Refreshing Elemental version of the perks that are baked in, as well as the gem slot. And then we have this perk down here that we can change to be what we want. This is a pretty good item. It's definitely one worth farming for. And this you get by finishing the main storyline in the Elysian Wild. So definitely working your way through the main storyline for the Elysian Wild zone to get these. Gonna be super worthwhile. Now in the heavy leg slot, we have Freedom, which has Unending Freedom, and then funny enough, Freedom as well. So this is just like the Freedom perk, but extra powerful. Stun slow and root effects expire 25% faster. And then, you know, we have the base version of it. So it's like two of these perks stacked on top. I guess in PvP, if you really don't want to get into any stuns at all, you know, if you want to get out of every stun, slow, and root as fast as possible, wearing a full set of heavy, which I think, is that still in there? Incoming crowd control duration minus 20%. Yeah, so you get that, and then you stack Freedom here, and you have Unending Freedom, and you put Freedom on every piece of gear, and basically nobody can stun you. It's going to be a bit of a meme build, but probably pretty fun. If you want to pick these up, they come from the PvP rewards track. Thankfully, this time, only level 20 plus. You don't have to be 100 like the previous ones, so you only need to be in silver or above, and you'll see it in checkpoint 3, but it is going to set you back another 50,000 Azoth Salt. Now moving over to the boot slot, or the foot slot, whatever you want to call it, we have the Tumbler Shoes. The unique perk on this is Shirking Blessing. Successfully dodging attack gives you 15% in power and a 25% fortify for 5 seconds, and you're also healed for 200 plus 2% of your max HP. So we got Shirking Fortification, we got Shirking Damage Boost, and then we've also got Shirking Heals all rolled into one. Refreshing, Physical Aversion, and the perk that you can change down here. These you get from the Season Pass on the free track at, I think it's level 20, right? 10, 20, yeah. So should be getting these fairly early on, and I think it's going to be an artifact that most people in a light equip load will be slotting in early, because the Shirking Blessing perk it's pretty good. It's not something that's super easy to activate, but it's better than nothing else, and they are 700 gear score boots with, you know, some decent perks. So yeah, Tumbler Shoes definitely worth the pickup from the free version of the season pass, something that you want to try and push towards nice and early in the expansion. So that covers all of the armor. Let's move on to the weapons now. The first weapon, I guess we'll just go in the list of how they appear in the weapon mastery tree. So sword and shield. First up, we have the sword then, which is the Butcher. This is sort of like a bleed build thing, basically. So bleeds last 33% longer on both weapons. So you could pair this with like a spear or rapier and extendo your bleeds quite a bit. And then you got Whirling Blade, which inflicts bleed as well, so you can actually add a bleed to your Whirling Blade, Empowering Whirling Blade, and Keenly Jagged. So yeah, lots of bleed going on here, and we do have this final perk that we can change to something else if we want. I think this is a pretty solid weapon. It could go in some tank builds, it could go in certainly some bleed builds in PvP and PvE as well. If you want to pick this sword up, you have to get it from the final boss of Dynasty Shipyard, so Empress Taeying, I think is what she's called. And I believe you can do it in normal or mutated in order to get this to drop. Final boss, Dynasty Shipyard. Oh, and I realized we didn't actually equip it. We've been equipping every other weapon or every other piece of gear so far. So here's a quick look at it if you want to see what it looks like. It's like a cool little scimitar thing. Pretty fun. You can see how it could like do some bleeding down there as well. Moving on to shields, there's actually no round shield on the test server right now, so we're going to be skipping straight over to the Kite Shield, and the Kite Shield that we have is called Michael, so it's very shiny. It has Refreshing Cleanse, cooldowns reduced by 5%, on block lose 1 debuff. Now this is actually bugged on the test server, and apparently you lose all debuffs when you block, which is pretty good. I suspect that's going to get fixed. We also have Counterattack. On block you get a 30% empower for 4 seconds. On block you heal for 3% base HP. Life stealing, and then the final perk, which we can switch out if we want, but it is Mortal Lifesteal. By the way, the switch out thing, I'll show you that at the end of the video. I realize we've been saying this all the way through, but if you're curious, how do we do this switchy perk thing, I'll show you that at the end of the video. This is a pretty solid shield if you are going to be running, I think like the Flail and the Kite Shield has been very, very popular on the test server. If Refreshing Cleanse, if it does like on block, you get to cleanse all debuffs, that's still really, really good. If they do nerf that, it's still going to be pretty solid, and you know, probably if you are running a Kite Shield, which is quite niche, then this is going to be the one to go for, I would say. One thing that's kind of interesting, by the way, is shields are in the weapon slot, right? You can see over here, shields are all included in weapons, but they go into the armor slot over here, and you can actually have like a sword and a shield, even though these would both be considered weapons, and you're only supposed to be able to equip like one artifact in the slot. We didn't actually cover that, by the way, but yeah, I can't have an artifact Warhammer and artifact sword because you can only have one per slot, so we can only have one piece of armor. One of our weapons can be an artifact, and one of our jewelry can be an artifact as well. Oh, I nearly didn't mention, you can get Michael from the PvP rewards track. You have to be silver or above, so 20 tracks completed or more. It appears in the 3rd checkpoint potentially, and you have to have 50,000 Azoth Salt if you want to buy it. The next shield up is an absolute chonker. It's called the Wall, and I think this is, if you're going to be running a tower shield, this is the one to go for. These two perks up here gain 5% base damage reduction. You cannot dodge, but you have 33% more stamina, and then Chromatic Ward says you take 25% less damage from all elemental sources. These two perks are pretty bonkers. Then we have Sturdy. Keenly Fortified, sadly, is always on the weapon, and this is just, or on the shield, and this is a really stinky perk, and then you can replace this bottom perk down here with whatever you want. One thing that's worth mentioning about, by the way, with the Wall is you can have your other weapon. So we do this, and although we can't dodge while we have the Wall out, if we switch to our other weapon, we can then just dodge away. So yeah, the restriction isn't as spooky as it seems, and the elemental damage reduction is really, really good. So this is definitely one worth farming for, and it drops in the Ennead from the final boss called Heru. Next up, we have the artifact rapier called Finisher. This is insanely good. I think this is probably one of the best rapiers in the game. Certainly for bleed builds, this is just a no-brainer. It's got some good perks. We have Finisher Harmony here, which has attacks against bleeding targets deal 15% more damage and reduce the cooldown of Flourish and Finish by 5%. There is a cooldown, but it works on both weapons. So you can reduce the cooldown of your rapier by attacking with another weapon, which is all kind of bonkers. You know, you could be attacking, you know, I could put like, be attacking with this flail and be lowering the cooldowns of my rapier, which is really weird. We've never really had that happen before, so that's pretty interesting. We also have Deadly Flourish and Keen Tondo, so it has 2 weapon perks on it. We got a socket, and then we got a perk that we could change down here. Probably want to put like Keenly Jagged on us or something. But yeah, pretty disgusting weapon. Definitely one that we're going to see a lot of people farming for, and you want to go for yourself. And this one drops from a mob called Montrapala, which is an open world boss spawn. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing its name right. Sadly, I don't have any footage I can show you of Montrapala because it only spawns once on the server, and once it's dead, it's gone. Hopefully they fix that when it comes to live, but it is in the Isle of Zervan zone, sort of around about here, I want to say. So yeah, that's going to be one that you definitely want to farm for on the day of release. But I do believe the enemy is quite big. It has a lot of health, so I think you're going to need multiple people to take it down. Moving over to the Hatchet, we have Freya's Francisca. I'm going to assume that's how it's pronounced. It has Thrown Mastery. Thrown Axe projectiles reduce all axe cooldowns by 25%, but it is a 5-second cooldown, so every 5 seconds we can drop those cooldowns. I guess if you do want to go for a throwing hatchet build, this is pretty cool, but throwing hatchet builds are kind of unusual right now. Maybe we'll see the rise of it, but I think this is a bit of a niche item. If you want to pick this one up, you can get it from the final boss of Garden of Genesis. It's called the Greenskeeper. So yeah, final boss in Garden of Genesis has the chance to give you the artifact Hatchet. Next up is the artifact Flail, which has the unique perk Odo's Punishment here. It says you deal 20% more damage to stunned foes, which is a bit of an unusual one because if you take a look at the Flail skill tree, there isn't actually anything in here that provides a stun. So I guess this is ideally looking to be paired with something like a Warhammer, but outside of that, its other perks are pretty good. Life Stealing is always on by default, so is Refreshing Move, and then the third perk you can change to whatever you want it to. I've changed it to a gem slot, actually. I decided to put a gem in it. But yeah, pretty good Flail. The Life Stealing Refreshing Move combo is pretty awesome. The punishment's a bit weird. You can farm this one from a mob called Zanash, and Zanash is located sort of in these caves. You can go around through Tribunal High Mound to get to it, or you can actually just go to High Mound's Rest, sort of climb up the rocks and jump in to get to Zanash. This should be one that you can kind of do solo, but the mob does have quite a bit of HP. For the Artifact Spear, we have Scorpion Sting. The unique perk on this is called Sting. It says Javelin now does 160% weapon damage and pulls targets towards you. Now, I do believe this is much more of a PvP thing than a PvE thing. I don't think you really see that much Javelin in PvE. Maybe for some, like, you know, montage, cool videos of you, like, pulling sheep over a cliff or something. But yeah, much more of a PvP thing. Sunder and Javelin is there to go with it as well. Trench and Strikes, which is a bit of a weird perk. I guess the idea is you pull them in and you hit them with a heavy attack, and then you can change Shirking Flames to be whatever perk you want it to be. If you do want to pick up Scorpion Sting, it's a bit of a tricky one to farm. You have to go and kill Scorpio, which is located in the Ordeal of the Scorpion. This mob only spawns at nighttime. You do need a glyph to get in, or you can drop in through the top of the roof if you want to be a bit more of a, I don't know, like if you want to go for some style points. But the mob is pretty tricky, so you might need to bring some friends to take this one down. The artifact Greataxe is called the Abyss, and not only does it look pretty cool, but it's got some pretty interesting perks as well. So Darkened Blade says 99% of the damage is converted to Void, and you can get this weapon to scale off of Intelligence if you have more points in Intelligence than Strength, I guess. We also have deal 20% more damage when mana is below 100%. Now, one thing to note about the Greataxe is it doesn't actually use mana at all. Holy flip, that attack looks cool. I haven't seen that before. It doesn't use any mana with its abilities, so if you do want to take advantage of the Abyss perk and get it to do 20% more damage, which you probably do want to trigger, you will need to pair it with some sort of weapon that uses mana. So a Ice Gauntlet, Firestaff, Void Gauntlet, Life Staff, or, you know, one of the magical weapons. It also has Abyssal Attunement, Refreshing Move, and Vicious, so some pretty solid perks on here. You can switch out Vicious for something else if you want to get like a gem slot or something, but this is a pretty cool looking axe. I haven't really played around with it much. But if you want to get this one to drop, just like with the sort of light hat that we looked at earlier, the Gandalf hat, this does come from Corrupted Portal or Corrupted Breach caches. So in particular, I think clearing the Corrupted Breaches in Merkgard has an increased chance to give the item to you. You have to take like full participation, so you need to do a lot of damage to enemies and, you know, like really basically not be AFK while you're doing these events in order to increase your chances of getting it from chests or get the chests that have the highest likelihood to give you the Abyss. The artifact Warhammer is called the Spark of Mjolnir. This is a pretty cool weapon. We actually made a tank build all around this weapon. Not only does it have some cool lightning effects, but it also really pops off and gives you some amazing value with the Spark perk here. Mighty Gavel causes a lightning strike that inflicts a 50% weaken for 7 seconds. Pretty awesome getting the weaken cap just with one ability. It also converts 99% of its damage to lightning, and you deal 20% more lightning damage with both weapons. So you could pair this with something else and put a topaz gem in the second weapon to convert some of that weapon's damage to lightning. It's a pretty cool hammer. You get Refreshing Mighty Gavel in here and Refreshing Move, and then you can change the bottom perk. I, of course, decided to put a gem, so we went for the gem slot perk in there. If you want to pick up the Spark of Mjolnir, it drops from the final boss of Lazarus, good old Chartis, the big stone fist boy, so should be a pretty easy farm. Again, whether it's the normal version of the dungeon or if you do have to do mutated, not entirely sure. But yeah, killing Chartis for the Spark of Mjolnir, probably going to be pretty fun. The Spark perk in particular is a pretty fun one. Now, the artifact Greatsword is probably one of the best artifacts in the game. It's called Serenity, and I think this is going to be one where if you're playing a Greatsword, you're going to be playing this artifact. Unless it gets nerfed going from the test server to live, the Balance Blade sort of unique passive to it is really good. 2% Empower, so 2% extra damage for 5 seconds whenever you attack, and you also get 2% Fortify whenever somebody hits you, and that lasts for 5 seconds on both of them, and they stack up to 20% in total. So 20% extra outgoing damage, 20% extra armor What's not to love about that? And then it also has Trenchant Strikes, Trenchant Crits, and Refreshing Move all baked in as well. And again, you can change the bottom perk. I changed it over to a gem slot for the Opal gem because that seemed like a no-brainer. This is an excellent, excellent weapon. However, for the PvE enthusiast, this is another one of the PvP track reward thing, but it's only 20 tracks. It's not 100 like we've seen with the other one, so it's only in the silver track or above, so you have to complete 20 tracks. And again, it can appear somewhere in checkpoint 3, and it will cost 50,000 Azoth Soul if it does pop up. The mechanic is our artifact musket, and honestly, I think this is probably one of the worst artifacts in the game. I'm sorry, musket lovers, but extra levers or extra levers says traps and sticky bomb cooldown reduced by 25%. I guess if you're going for like a trapper build, it's kind of cool, but usually muskets, you just want to pump some big DPS, and of course it's got accelerating traps and mending sticky bombs. It's like a weird utility musket, and it's not really that exciting. But if you do want to pick this one up, you can get it in the Elysian Wilds. It's located at Sarkor Ori, and you can get it around here. Actually, you can see where I died recently from the Toymaker. Toymaker Petar has the chance to drop this musket if you want to play with a weird sort of trapper bomb build. Pestilence is an incredibly powerful blunderbuss for PvP. It has blighted enchantment, so attacks against targets inflict a stack of poison, which decreases incoming and outgoing healing, which is pretty bonkers, and then 15% damage against poison and disease targets. So if you disease them, aka reduce their healing, which you can do with plague crits or the blighted enchantment, then you do 15% extra damage. This is like the healer hunter weapon, so if you want to play PvP and destroy some healers, and maybe even like be pretty effective at a nature mutation, this is definitely going to be an artifact blunderbuss to go for. This one also comes from the PvP rewards track, and this one requires level 50 plus, so 50 plus tracks complete for it to show up, which is gold or higher. Again, it's going to be on checkpoint 3, and again, it's going to be 50,000 Azoth Soul if it does pop up. For the Firestaff, we have Inferno. Sadly, this weapon looked really cool when I first looked at it, but the fact that it does strike damage instead of fire damage makes it really underwhelming, because you really would like it to do fire damage, because then you get all of the benefits of like intelligence, increasing your elemental damage and increasing your ability damage and stuff. It just sadly doesn't seem to be anywhere near as good as a normal Firestaff. But it says if higher, this weapon scales with strength, so you can have a strength scaling Firestaff, and you do 20% damage when you hit a target within 5 meters. So I thought this would be really good for like a flamethrower build, but yeah, it just ended up being pretty underwhelming. But if you do want to pick this one up, you want to try and save it, maybe it gets some buffs when it goes into live, you can get it from the final boss of Empyrean Forge. It comes from Commander Marius. Now again, on the test server, there was sadly no Artifact Lifestaff and no Artifact Ice Gauntlet, but once those get revealed, we will take a look at them and talk about where we can get them and how good they are. So the only other weapon we have to cover is the Artifact Void Gauntlet, which is called Life Taker. Now I think this is a very, very, very good Void Gauntlet, one that I'm pretty much always going to be pairing with a Lifestaff when I'm healing in PvE, and honestly probably in quite a few PvP builds as well, and that is because of this negative energy perk. So it basically adds this disintegrate ability to your ranged attacks that works on both weapons. So you can effectively have your ranged Lifestaff attacks get the disintegrate effect, which is normally only available on Void Blade, which is 5% weapon damage per second, and you reduce target's armor by 10%, and it stacks it to 3 times. So you can rend like a target by up to 30%, reduce that armor by 30%, just with Lifestaff basic attacks by having Life Taker in the other weapon slot. Its other perks are Keen, Life Stealing, Refreshing Move, and Blast, and again, we can change that Blast perk if we want. Life Taker is going to be a bit tricky one to get, though. It comes from Pugnacious Perutu, I think is how you pronounce it. He's a big monkey located in the Isle of Zervan. Sadly, I wasn't really able to figure out a way to fight him when I was playing on the test server. It looks like you probably need to attack him from across the bridge or something. But yeah, he has the chance to drop Life Taker. Lastly, we have the jewelry artifact. So we have 1 amulet, 1 ring, and 1 earring. The amulet is called Lost Stopwatch. It's an interesting one. It activates taunt gems. So if you have a taunt ability that has an on-hit effect, so for example, Warhammer, any targets it hits, it taunts them. But then we take a look at something, you know, another classic taunt, which is Defender's Resolve. When you pop this, it doesn't actually hit any targets. It's more like an aura going out. So this doesn't activate with the taunt gem. Or rather with the what the heck is it called again? The Lost Stopwatch. So it has to be a stun that has an on-hit effect, if that makes sense. So Riposte is an example that wouldn't work. So is the Defender's Resolve, but Shockwave and Mighty Gavel anything that actually hits the enemy, and that's what inflicts taunt. You can taunt enemies without having a carnelian gem in your weapon as a result of the stunny gaze. That's pretty cool. Also makes stuns last 100% longer, which is really, really good for PvP, but base damage is decreased by 5%. The other perks on it: Purify, Health, Shirking, Debilitating Cleanse, which you can change out. This is going to be a good one to get for PvP and a good one to get for some various tank builds because it frees up that sort of gem slot in your weapons. This one you can get to drop from Commander Thorpe, so there's actually a sort of Commander Thorpe mob that you can kill somewhere in Great Cleave. We'll have some footage up on the screen, but it's located, I think, close to the Battle Class Shrine. Again, we should hopefully have the footage to show you killing Commander Thorpe and hopefully getting this to drop off of him. One of my favorite artifacts in the game, and you know, when I first sort of looked at this, I was like, ooh, that looks exciting, is Blood Drinker. This is a ring which gives you minus 25% damage, so you do 25% less damage, which doesn't sound great, but you get 25% lifesteal, and then it's got the leeching perk and hearty and keen. This is a really solid ring just out the box. You can take a high DPS build, drop some of the damage, and just get insane sustain. I was using this to like solo Corrupted Breaches up in Murkgard on my own and stuff, so very, very fun ring to have some sort of build arounds. And this one you get from Starstone Barrows. It drops from the final boss in Starstone, which is located just here. We haven't quite discovered this one yet. Grengul, the Region, I think is his name. But yeah, final boss of Starstone. Whether it has to be normal or mutated, again, we're not entirely sure. But very cool ring, and one that I definitely recommend that you go for. Lastly, we have the artifact earring called Endless Thirst. The perk on this one: health potions are 33% stronger, cooldown is 20% longer. Yeah, not super exciting. We've also got Impairing Toast, Fortifying Toast, Healing Heart. However, this is one that's really easy to get. It comes from right at the end of the season pass. Well, I say it's really easy to get, you know, it's the end of the season pass, but it's on the free track, so everybody should get it eventually. And you know, if you're not using the ring for any particular build, and you're not using the amulet because you're not a tank, then this is probably going to be something that you'll slot in fairly frequently, just, you know, because why not have a piece of artifact jewelry? So that is going to conclude for all of the artifacts currently in the game. Again, there's no bow, no life staff, no ice gauntlet, no round shield, and there's a few pieces of armor that are missing as well. But once those are added into the game, we will of course have a video on those as well. So let me know which artifacts you guys are most excited for, which ones you're most keen to go and farm. I think the Greatsword, the ring, the Void Gauntlet, the Warhammer, those are some of my favorites. And then some of the ones that are a bit on the stinky end is that medium helmet. The Musket just looks pretty underwhelming, and sadly the Firestaff just wasn't good as well. But yeah, let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you go ahead and click the like button, subscribe if you want me to see like more New World content. I can barely do my words anymore. Catch you guys all in the next video.